for those of us who are not tax lawyers, and I'm decidedly not, as you know, explain this $1.17 billion loss. Did he really lose that money, or did he just get to take it as a loss on his tax returns?
Both. He lost spectacularly. Year after year, Donald J. Trump ran through money. Now, the tax rules often are generous for real estate developers. They allow a lot of depreciation deductions, interest expense, other operational expenses. So real estate developers like Donald J. Trump can deduct a lot in excess of their income in many instances, which gives rise to net operating losses. But Donald J. Trump lost a lot of money.
So if you took a look at his net worth, we don't know all the facts here, but if you took a look at his net worth at the beginning of that 10-year period and the end of the 10-year period, would it be $1 billion lower?
No. Donald Trump borrowed from banks and public investors the money he used to invest. And interestingly enough, he borrowed and spent that money and took deductions, and other people, in effect, funded his deductions. So he ultimately was relieved of a lot of his debt and never really repaid it. And so, to a large degree, his lenders took the hit, not him. Also, the U.S. taxpayers, because he deducted the money he borrowed, but unlike other taxpayers, when he was forgiven of debt, he didn't pick up income from that forgiveness.
Well, see, that's an important point, because normally, as I understand it in the tax code, if you borrow money and then you're forgiven the loan, you have to take that as income because you could increase your wealth and you didn't have to pay it back. But there are certain exceptions, as I understand, that perhaps Donald Trump took advantage of.
Absolutely, David. Normally, if you or I borrowed $1 million to buy a house, we would not have any income on the $1 million cash that we owed, that we had, or the house, because it was offset by $1 million liability. If the bank forgave that liability, then we'd have $1 million of income at the time the bank forgave our loan. Donald J. Trump borrowed $1 billion, close to $1 billion, from banks and public investors. But when he used that money to buy buildings, take depreciation, pay operating expenses. But when he was forgiven the $1 billion, he didn't pick up $1 billion of income.
So Stephen, the president tweeted out about this morning, and it was a little bit of a complex sort of series of tweets here that I took from it. Number one, it's fake. Number two, it's old. But number three, that's the way it works in the real estate development business. Is that right? If we were to look at other real estate developers of similar size and scope, would we similarly see these huge write-downs?
No. We'd see lots of deductions from depreciation and operating expenses, but very few taxpayers are able to get away with walking away from a debt without picking up income. Donald J. Trump used a very tricky strategy that I wrote about in a tax periodical a couple of years ago. Very aggressive, in my view, crossed the line. His own lawyers told him he was unlikely to prevail if the IRS found him and challenged him. And so he was able to sidestep that $1 billion of income that might have arisen from the forgiveness of his debt through this very sophisticated, tricky strategy that most other taxpayers never would have tried. So, yes, there's a lot of deductions for real estate developers, but they don't get away with as much as Donald J. Trump got away with.